On behalf of the UNESCO Chair on Community Media, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this very unique discussion on community media in Francophone Africa. This is presented to you in collaboration with Farm Radio International, FRI, and Fondation Hirondelle, FH, both of which have been a big support in curating this dialogue and organizing this special bilingual experience. As some of you may know, this is the seventh in our ongoing series called Global Dialogues on Community Media in the Post-Pandemic World, a series of discussions that the UNESCO Chair on Community Media has been curating and hosting in collaboration with the UNESCO Regional Office in New Delhi, India. We have been hearing so far from community radio broadcasters, policy advocates, activists from various regions of the world, including from South Asia, Australia, the UK and Ireland, Eastern and Southern Africa, Western and Central Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. Regular attendees of these dialogues have been listening to the valuable service being rendered during the current COVID-19 crisis by community radio stations in those regions. Our panelists have also been offering their insights on the future of community radio more broadly in their respective countries and regions. After today's dialogue, we move on to Europe and then to the Americas, North America and then South and Latin America. Today's dialogue focused on the experiences of Francophone Africa is indeed unique and special because much of the excitement one hears about Africa rising for a long time has been about Anglophone Africa, and somehow the French-speaking parts of the continent have been left out of the narrative. While this may have been primarily about the economy, this is also true of what many of us know about the state of community media in Africa. Most of what we know is about the thriving community radio scene in the English-speaking countries of Africa. I have, of course, heard, because of my own work on community media, heard and read about the dynamic rural community radios of Mali. And a couple of years ago, I met and listened to Jacques Vagheni of the DRC at a meeting in Douala, Cameroon, and learned about the wonderful work being done by Coracon and other organizations to keep alive hope and the promise of peace and development in the region. So I'm delighted to see you here, Jacques. Welcome to the dialogue. I'm also delighted, therefore, that we at the UNESCO Chair on Community Media have this opportunity to present the world of Francophone Africa, Francophone African community radios to our friends globally. To help us with this conversation today, we have Sylvie Harrison, who is the Radio Craft Manager for Farm Radio International. Welcome, Sylvie. Sylvie's work includes designing radio programs, training, and radio program monitoring and evaluation at FRI. She leads a team of 12 people from across sub-Saharan Africa. Sylvie has a background in private as well as public broadcasting. A few years ago, in 2013-14 to be precise, Sylvie Harrison spent 11 months in northern Ghana working with radio stations through FRI. I will now hand over this dialogue to Sylvie and request her to take this forward. Let me at this stage alert our English-speaking audience that Sylvie will briefly translate my remarks into French for our panelists and the French-speaking audience before introducing the panelists themselves. So you might now want to click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select English for simultaneous translation. Our thanks especially to Clementina Sanchez for the translation effort, which you will see over the next hour or two, and the excellent technical team, both at FRI, led by Mark Leclerc, and Pranay Rupani of the UNESCO Chair on Community Media. Over to Sylvie.
Thank you. Merci. Donc, je vais maintenant traduire pour nos panélistes francophones et le public francophone avant de présenter le panel lui-même et de faire mon introduction. Et je vais aussi prendre l'opportunité de remercier Clementina Sanchez tout de suite pour l'effort de traduction qui prendra la relève après cette traduction. Donc, bon après-midi, bonsoir, bonjour. Au nom de la chaire UNESCO sur les médias communautaires, j'ai le grand plaisir de vous accueillir tous à cette discussion tout à fait unique sur les médias communautaires en Afrique francophone. Celui-ci est présenté en collaboration avec Radio Rurale Internationale et la Fondation Hirondelle, qui ont toutes deux été un grand soutien pour organiser ce dialogue et organiser cette expérience bilingue. Comme certains d'entre vous le savent peut-être, il s'agit de la 7e de la série en cours intitulée « Dialogues mondiaux sur les médias communautaires dans le monde post-pandémique », une série de discussions de la chaire UNESCO sur les médias communautaires. Donc, la chaire UNESCO sur les médias communautaires a organisé et animé en collaboration avec le bureau régional de l'UNESCO à New Delhi. Et donc, jusqu'à présent, nous avons entendu des radiodiffuseurs communautaires, des défenseurs des politiques et des militants de diverses régions du monde, notamment l'Asie du Sud, l'Australie, le Royaume-Uni et l'Irlande, l'Afrique orientale et australe, l'Afrique occidentale et centrale, l'Asie du Sud et le Pacifique. Donc, les participants réguliers à ces dialogues ont écouté le précieux service rendu pendant la crise actuelle de COVID-19 par les stations de radio communautaires dans ces régions. Nos panélistes ont également offert leur point de vue sur l'avenir de la radio communautaire, plus généralement, et ensuite dans leurs pays et régions respectives. Donc, après le dialogue d'aujourd'hui, nous nous dirigeons vers l'Europe et puis vers les Amériques. Le dialogue d'aujourd'hui, axé sur les expériences de l'Afrique francophone, est en effet unique et spécial car une grande partie de l'enthousiasme suscité par Africa Rising pendant longtemps a porté sur l'Afrique anglophone. Et d'une manière ou d'une autre, les parties francophones du continent ont été exclus du récit. Bien que cela ait pu concerner principalement l'économie, cela est également vrai de ce que beaucoup d'entre nous savent sur l'état des médias communautaires en Afrique. La plupart de ce que nous savons concerne la scène florissante de la radio communautaire dans les pays anglophones d'Afrique. J'ai bien sûr entendu et lu sur les radios communautaires rurales dynamiques du Mali et il y a quelques années, j'ai rencontré et écouté Jacques Vagheni de la RDC lors d'une réunion à Douala, au Cameroun, et j'ai appris le travail accompli de Coracon et d'autres organisations pour garder vivant l'espoir et la promesse de paix et de développement dans la région. Je suis donc ravie que la chaire UNESCO sur les médias communautaires ait cette opportunité de présenter le monde des radios communautaires francophones africaines à nos amis du monde entier. Donc, pour nous aider dans cette conversation aujourd'hui, nous accueillons Sylvie Harrison. Donc, je suis toujours en traduction. Sylvie Harrison, qui est la gestionnaire de l'équipe des métiers radiophoniques pour Radio Rurale Internationale. Donc, voilà. Merci beaucoup et bienvenue. C'est à mon tour maintenant.
We will then now start the translation. Thank you very much for this introduction. Hi everyone,
mondial.
Je suis again to this global dialogue. I am very happy to moderate this conference, the only one that is in French among all these series of the global dialogue on community radio's post-pandemic world. It's a rare occasion to exchange on an international scale about the realities of the community radios and share our experience. Our theme today is to reinforce, to strengthen the proximity of the community radios in Francophone Africa. The radio stations, community radio stations in Africa have played an active role in the fight against COVID-19 with many challenges, internet, finances. These community media have showed with their skills the value of their information and also how close they are to their auditors. We have the chance today, we have representatives from different countries, from Burkina Faso, Madagascar, Mali, the Central Africa Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in a little bit, we are going to be talking about the local situation in each of these countries, the impact of the pandemic and the consequences on women, the challenges and the strength in face of fake news, how the radios have faced the challenges with the use of local languages, and also the challenges and the use of digital media, the reflection for the coming years, and then a question and answer session. So now I'm going to introduce the panelists. So Sylvie Panika is a journalist, director of radio Ndeke Luka, the only independent and most listened to radio stations in Central African Republic. She's one of the leaders in the field of media throughout the country. She has taken full advantage of Fondation Hirondelle's training programs and coaching, and has developed expertise in several areas. She is also the co-founder of the Association of Women Communication Professionals. She is also a well-known active and influential member of various civil society organizations in the Central African Republic. She acts also as a consultant and resource person for various national and international organizations in the field of communication and media in the Central African Republic and most Central African countries. She is co-founder of the NGO Lea Feka, feminist leader in the Central African Republic. Now, Martin Faye is a Senegalese journalist and since 2015 a representative of Fondation Hirondelle, the chief of project of the Studio Tamani project in Mali. Previously, he managed the Foundation's project in the Central African Republic and Guinea. After studying journalism at the Cheikh Anta Diop Universities of Dakar, Montreal, and Bordeaux III, he worked for about 20 years at RTS, Senegalese radio television. He then directed for about 10 years a program to support local radio stations in Africa on behalf of the SDC, Swiss Corporation, and the International Organization of the Francophonie. As a representative consultant for various international organizations, Martin Faye has been involved in the development of the media in French-speaking Africa, from the first independent newspapers, the emergence of community radio stations, the still incomplete emergence of public service radio and television, to the revolution in new technologies. Boureima Bajamanama is a journalist with 20 years of radio experience. He worked as a journalist, program manager and director of the Radio Evangile Development Station in Leo for 18 years. Cumulatively, in this position, He coordinated communication activities with partner radio stations, the NGO Credo. At the same time, he was a freelance writer on the national radio for cultural news in Sicily province until 2009. Distinguished Knight of the National Order of Burkina Faso and vice winner of the George Atkins Communications Prize from FRI, from Radio International. Benjamin Nama has been Radio Craft Officer of Farm Radio International in Burkina Faso since 2018. In this capacity, he coordinates the team responsible for the evaluation and identification of partner radio stations, the design of programs, capacity building, and skills of partner radio stations according to FRI. Now, Misa Ramisarivelo joined the Sifaka project Madagascar as editor-in-chief in August 2019 when the editorial team was set up. The editorial team was formed for 2 months before the official start of the project. Her main mission is to coordinate the activities of the editorial staff and to supervise the journalists, most of whom are young and new to the profession. Misa Ramisarivelo worked as a journalist in television channels at the very beginning of her career, but after entering the School of Journalism at the university, she opted for written journalism later during election periods. She discovered media monitoring and then web editing. Jacques Kakule Vagheni is the coordinator of Coracon, the community radio stations television collective in North Kivu in the Democratic Congo. Its role is to contribute to the development of community radio to make it useful to the population. Journalist since 2004, Jacques Kakule Vagheni had a taste for the profession when he hosted environmental education programs, which gave him the opportunity to take a series of journalism training courses. In 2015, he became an intern in Bonn, Germany at the French-speaking editorial board of Dutch Well. Then he became its correspondent. He has a degree in rural development and believes that the strong should support the weak. Thank you to everyone that are following us from 4 continents. It's the first time that the global dialogue is offered in 2 languages. Little reminder for all the panelists and for myself too, to please to speak slowly so that the translation can be as useful as possible. So finally, for everyone that is here, at the end of the discussion, we will have a session, question and answer session. And we will take questions from the chat. So don't hesitate to ask your questions through the discussion, and we will come back to it at the end. So that is, the table is set, we are ready, so we are going to start. So for the first question, I'm going to ask all the panelists to reply to this first question, and then you'll see I'll go and check on different panelists according to the themes. So to start, I would like all of you to tell me what the landscape looks like of the community radio where you are since the beginning of the pandemic. So I'll start with Sylvie.
Bonjour Sylvie, bonjour à tous les panélistes et bonjour à tous.
Hi Sylvie, hi everyone, and hi to everyone who is following us.
Cette opportunité.
Thank you very much for this opportunity that really allow us to exchange on the situation with COVID in the different countries, to answer directly the question regarding the situation of the community radios with COVID.
Dire que d'une manière générale,
we can say that in general the situation is precarious in the Central African Republic. There is a community radio station
dérouler un programme
we cannot find a community radio station, and it seems that she's having a bit of some connection issues, so I cannot hear her right now. Hopefully she will be repeating.
Et ce réseau travaille en partenariat avec les mesures qui sont mises en place.
Okay. There is some connection issues, I think, with Sylvie Panika.
En tant que tel qui est élaboré par ce radio,
Apologies for that. We are hearing only a few blurbs of what she's saying, so it's a bit hard to translate. We cannot hear her anymore right now.
Go ahead, Sylvie Harrison. We'll see if we can get her back later.
So Sylvie Harrison is going to go ahead and see if we can hear her back later. So there's unfortunately a problem of connection. So I will start the same question to Martin. Martin, can you tell us what the landscape looks like of a community radio station since the beginning of the pandemic? Yes. Hi everyone. I am in Bamako in Mali. And here we live a situation where the landscape of community of the radio is dense. It's very dense, and this is due to the history. In Mali, the community radio stations, they accompany the democratization process since the 90s in circumstances, very exceptional circumstances. What happened is during a period where the national radio was the only radio station and was the only radio station in the country, when at a certain point when the population was really in need to express themselves, that's when they opened it to other radio stations. And at the very beginning, you didn't even need to request the frequency. You just had to have your equipment and start. This is why today we can consider Mali where there is the biggest number of community radio stations, more than 400 in Mali. In the most far away areas, most rural areas, you can find maybe one. And a situation, a very rich landscape of radio station. And within this radio station, we find some that are managed by NGOs, charities, and some are on themes, different themes, youth, women. And these radio stations, they now play a very important role in the education of the population and to show local information, of proximity to the populations. Thank you, Martin. Benjamin, your turn. Thank you very much, Sylvie, and hi, everyone. I will say that regarding Burkina Faso, we share the same, more or less the same story as Mali, especially also because we are neighbors. As of today, we have 200 radio stations in Burkina Faso. We have some confessional, religious radio station, but in reality, they also have this vocation of bringing. And so during the pandemic, what was the reaction of the community radio station in Burkina Faso? He's asking Sylvie. The reaction of the community radio station is to be congratulated because it was prompt and right away, instantaneous. They have not waited for the local authorities to bring their contributions. But we felt in a lot of cases that these radio stations went to the authorities asking them, what can we bring, what can we do? And we are, as journalists and citizens, is this dynamic that really helped the radio stations be the owner of this this theme, and really bring their contributions. I now go towards Misa. What the community radio stations look like there since the beginning of the pandemic. Hi everyone. I'm in Tananarivo, in Madagascar. We have 450 radios, all types. Is the most accessible media in Madagascar, and also it's in the rural areas and also in the cities. We have to remind that 80% of the Madagascar people are in the rural areas. During this period of pandemic, there is a lot of awareness done in the community radio station, and also programs, educational programs, created especially to inform people on the COVID. She's explaining why they are calling COVID a certain difficulty. The challenge for this community radio is to explain some complicated situation about this disease, because the ministry made an announcement that all the information should come from the ministry, should come from the central center.
Qu'à travers le CCO. Or, la plupart des membres du CCO.
But the most members of the ministry, they are busy because they are trying to fight this COVID. So the challenge for this community radio station is to find this information or to share this information without having a reaction from the authorities, the health authorities. So I think that's it. Thank you. And finally, your turn, Jacques, for the landscape in community radio where you are since the beginning of the pandemic.
Je crois que vous êtes sur silence, Jacques, votre micro. Voilà.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde, bonjour.
Hi everyone. Hi Sylvie. In DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm in the east. I am 2,000 kilometers away from Kinshasa, so you can understand how large the country is. And big number. We have more than 500 community radio stations, and we like to call them the proximity radio stations, because in the management, in the politics of the management of those radio stations. We like them to be very close to the populations.
L'accès à l'accès
The access to for the citizens, the access for the citizens to talk is very important in the history of radio in a country, and radio was a tool used for that, and even the normal citizens, they can have something to say and they can use those radio stations to talk. When the COVID pandemic arrived with this big, large dynamic radio landscape, the journalists of all these radio stations, they showed their quick reaction, especially looking for the right information. The challenge was really the same that Misa explained, is also to show the right to speak about the right information, but also to find that right information. And this was something real. And those who had this information, they wanted to centralize it, especially in Kinshasa, where there is the National Committee in fighting COVID. It's 2,000 kilometers away, like I already told you. So, and it was a new disease. Even the specialists, in quotes, they were not able to reply to some of the questions, but slowly, step by step, we found some solutions to use the social media, because a good thing is that all these radio stations, they are joined, they are together in some of those social medias. We also have a network. They are together in different networks, national networks, and among all these networks, we found some solution to share information. So the one that finds a good source, he can realize a program, and that can be shared. And I want to stress that FRI, with who we collaborate since a long time, with the collaboration mechanism, with all the networking, national networking, international networking, it really helped us to solve some of those challenges. Thank you.
Donc, on a parlé un peu de cette centralisation.
So we talked about this centralization of the information, but also the fact that the people towards who we go to find those solutions, they are very busy. They are very busy. And we know that the auditors in your different countries, they also live other crises. So people have priorities that are different, and they face different crises. So maybe sanitary, security, environmental. So how, and I'm going to address the question to Sylvie, Panika, how the radio stations manage the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis? Was it different than other crises that they face?
Merci Sylvie.
Thank you, Sylvie. We seem to having some connection issues with Sylvie, Panika. Apologize for that. I'm
Aujourd'hui,
able to translate.
Les médias sont toujours en première ligne pour
The media are always on the first line in Central African Republic. It's cut again. Apologies for that. I'm unable to translate. I cannot hear her at all.
ces pandémies. Il y a eu des
In
crises.
the fight against this pandemic, there were other crises like cholera, meningitis.
Ont été gérées par la manière d'avoir les personnes reçues.
The information
Compliqué.
is always complicated. The health minister
De tous les médias notamment qui se sont rendus disponibles pour
they made themselves available to present the information
sur le plan politique ou bien
when
la
it was on the political level or health level
économique, mais les médias
or
sont
even
toujours
economical crisis,
première ligne.
but the medias, they're always on the first line.
Beaucoup d'importance et
so this gave a lot of importance and power to this media that face
dans le pays.
This crisis in the country.
Beaucoup plus aussi à relever, à partager ici dans cette discussion, c'est que
Sorry, it's cutting out.
Ils doivent faire
the journalists that have
relayer ces informations, les journalistes. Allô? Allô?
Oui, on vous entend encore. Ça coupe un peu, Sylvie, mais on réussit à entendre.
So Sylvie, it's cutting a bit, but we can still hear you a bit. It's very hard for the translation, so I'm sorry. She's asking if we can hear her. Yes, we can hear you, says Sylvie, the moderator.
Moi, je vous entends pas.
Ah, OK.
And Sylvie Panika cannot hear us. So we are going, while we are trying to figure out the connection issue, I think it's a connection challenge with Sylvie Panika. I'm going to ask the same question to Jacques. Jacques, the auditors, they leave other crises. People have many different priorities. Sanitary, security, environmental. How do the radio stations manage the COVID-19 crisis? Was it different? Did we learn some lessons? How did it go?
Oui. Pour ce qui est de la RDC,
for the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, the COVID-19 pandemic arrived when we were facing another epidemic, the epidemic of Ebola epidemic, especially here in northern Kivu, where I am. And we have to say that at every bad thing, there is always something positive. And so there was already this dynamic, of the Ebola fight against Ebola, and
que Ebola a préparé plus ou moins COVID.
And so people think that Ebola prepared more or less COVID, and so the reaction of the radio station, they were prepared, and the reaction was quick. Between the different epidemics, there are similarities, even though there are also differences. Among the Coracon network, when we talked with the different responsible radio station managers, we can see that they were quite receptive to the fact that we have to develop quickly some programs and talk about the new pandemic. they were also forgetting of other field in the media. We could feel a lot information on COVID, and to forget all the other domains, for example, economic domain, which is a problem for the radio stations, for the households, and all these measures that followed also the confinement, isolation, things that really complicated the situation to the point that some people, especially our listeners, they were wondering if the COVID, I'm talking a bit of those listeners, the thing of the COVID maybe is not an additional punishment. An additional, in northern Kivu, because Ebola touched mostly northern Kivu, and it was the election period, it made it that we had to delay the presidential elections in northern Kivu, and so it created a lot of when COVID came, it says, oh, because they couldn't exterminate us with Ebola, now they are bringing us COVID. And so they, who is they? So you understand a bit the context in which we had to develop the training,
des informations
to reassure people and all everything the listeners were saying. And this brings us to a topic that we wanted to talk during this dialogue, is the fake news. So all the discussions about the fake news. So Misa, I'm going to go to you. What was the hardest for you in the fight against fake news?
Depuis l'arrivée de la pandémie,
Since the beginning of the pandemic,
de la pandémie à Madagascar, c'était le 19 mars.
Madagascar, it was the March 19. We detected 3 cases, and the state decided to right away do confinement in Antananarivo. And from then, and even before the epidemic did a lot of disasters in other countries, there were a lot of fake news, a lot of theories.
C'est la surinformation, notamment sur les réseaux sociaux.
It was
c'est difficile.
The surinformation, like too much information. It's difficult to go against that, or to explain, or to bring things on that, because there are too many theories, there are too many explanations. There's no experts on that. Also, I had an experience, a very particular experience with that. There is a lot of opinions, there is a lot of expressions, a lot of feelings, a lot of opinions, and social media really became, social network became a space for everyone to show their opinions. And for us as journalists, we will never, of course, share that, but when there is rumors, for example, on Facebook, there is the publication of a communication that the health minister details the protocol, the treatment protocol for COVID. It was, we saw a whole list of medicine, and
Tout le monde a
and it got spread on Facebook, and us, we called the health minister. Is it true? Is it really you that did the communication? Because the header and the signature was the minister, but there was no stamp and there was no date. But apparently it comes from you, but they didn't want to confirm. They didn't want to confirm that, and it's the strategy. Oh, you just found
Et
out
là,
this
c'est
news, so we are going to meet and talk about this. And that's when everyone saw all these medicines, hydrochloroquine, azithromycin. And so now there's a big panic, and everyone is asking, the price and how do we do to protect ourselves. And this is really hard to reassure our listeners about the numerous rumors and a lot of the fake information on Facebook, because people are easily influenced on this information. More than the verification and the counter information that we to relay. So because it's closer to what they think. They think that the state did that to get money from the foreigners, that it is injected in the body. This information that there is no coming from nowhere. And when the media gives when we give the right information, people really believe us because we don't we are not in the complot theories, but the journalists, they really take the time to verify the information, even if it takes a bit of time. Compared to the speed of the fake information, we always take the time to verify information. Benjamin, thank you, Misa. Benjamin, in terms of fake news, can you tell us how people have tried to check the information and how it went in Burkina Faso? Thank you very much, Sylvie. In effect, actually, yes, indeed, in Burkina, the radio is considered like a channel where we receive information, but also a channel where we verify the information, which brings we have some connection issue. It's Benjamin cut. Okay, and this brings us for the broadcasters to really go and find the source of the information, to really make sure that the information is credible and can help the communities. And on the other side, we can also say that FRI, Farm Radio International, was really proactive, not to do the advertisement of FRI, but they produce resources on different themes that they really spread, not only via email, but also via social networks, to really bring credible information. And FRI also helped us to collect index of experts about COVID that really helped to bring their contributions among community radio stations, because like we said at the beginning, it was not always sure that the person you had in front of you could bring the right information. So that's how we were able to do the first. It's possible that during the first programs there were some fake news, But afterwards, we were able to come back to some of the information already given and correct it.
Puis,
Thank you. Yes, Misa, you talk about this information, like too much information, that there were so many things that were talked about, but one thing that really stayed behind in the closed doors, and especially because one of the directives given during the pandemic is to stay at home, not go out, to have the physical distancing, but really to stay at home. The school were closed, the public transport, the markets, and there were some reports that were talking of the impact of this pandemic on women. So regarding, for example, the increase of early marriage, violence on women, and maybe this we talk about it less. Was it the case there? Did you hear about? Did you hear of an increase of these things? And what was the impact on women? The impact of the pandemic on women, and how the community radio talked about these things. I will ask Misa this question. Yes, the confinement was something new for everyone here in Madagascar. Is a new experience. Is almost like a surprise. We faced the pandemic of another disease in 2017. But everything was stopped, even the generating activities, revenue generating activities. So every 15 days, are we going to continue the confinement? So everyone is very stressed here. We met the confinement, reconfinement, deconfinement, and so the impact of all this on women is a lot, because in Atana and in the south of Madagascar and everywhere there is the problem of access to water. I don't know if you already saw some pictures. The lines to get the water in the public fountain wells, and all this takes time, and a lot of people need to find water, and so it's the activity of the woman. Yeah, the water is life, so we cannot do when we don't have water at home, even if we are confined. The confinement is nothing if we don't have water. In the south of Madagascar, especially, yes, in the south of Madagascar, with the lack of rain, of water, this problem is really much more in the south. In Atana too, and the problem also of the menstrual cycle, because we are in difficulty to shower, to clean ourselves because of this problem of access to water. So the impact on women is, there are many examples. I'm not going to mention a lot of them, but the impact on women in the activities, also the violence, the violence on women, also the problems of a couple. Also, there is also technical employment. A lot of companies, also the independent workers, liberal workers, they also don't get any work. So it really increased the problems in all the households. And so I don't have exact numbers, but there is an increase of violence in the households and tensions in the couples, in couples. relationships. How did the community radio talked about these topics? So for us, for example, we have educational programs, cultural programs. We had discussions. We invited some people to talk about this, and especially how to face this tension in the couple, in the family, how to manage the children, and also the problematic of autistic children, because the specialized schools that were closed during the confinement. So all this, we talked about it in our programs. We invite some specialists. We invited psychologists about how to face and how to live this, because it's new for everyone. So we put in place different themes to talk about this. Thank you, says Sylvie. Martin, do you think that the community radio, with all these, with their big proximity to the listeners, did the community radio stations are the best to tackle these topics, because they are the most sensitive topics most of the time? Are they the best to talk about these topics? Yes, I'm convinced that looking at the place in the media of the place of the radio in the media, I think that the community radio stations are the best to spread this information, these topics. Now, the difficulty is that the agents that work in those community radio stations are not always trained for these sensitive topics. They are not trained about crisis management. And here we have a sanitary crisis like Ebola, and I was in Guinea in the times of Ebola. And the radio stations do not know how to do it. And what we do in general, what the people do in radio, is that they just repeat the communications from the authorities, the health ministry. For example, when they publish communication on the, all the things that have to be done, like washing hands, but it's really important that this information to be looked at deeply, to be repeated in different local languages, to really be. And we don't explain why we have to adhere to this message. So there is this lack of training. And we should, at the end of the pandemic, if it ends one day, is really to take the lessons and try to train all the radio stations on how to manage crisis and sanitary crisis. I lived through this intensely in Guinea with Ebola. Here too in Mali, where we produce messages in different languages, regional languages. The languages of production of our programs, we try to add as many as we can to really touch or reach as many people as we can. There is a rule in the community radio station. We have to talk to the listeners in the language that they use every day. So we really have to talk to the Tamashek in their language, or for example in the Gao regions in their languages, and not in Bambara, which is the majority language, and even less in French. So what I want to summarize, yes, the community radio stations are the tools of communication that are the best adapted to communicate very effective communication, but we have to accompany it to train the radio stations, because they don't always have the tools, the technique, the trainings to use the information, and to also use the local language to show this, to share this communication. I'm going to go back to Sylvie. I had asked her a question when we were talking about the fake news, and then we were having some connection issues, but I would like to go back to you, Sylvie, to talk about it, so fake news, to have your reaction for this.
D'abord, ça a été un peu difficile pour le.
So first, it has been a bit hard for the Central African Republic.
C'est une pandémie, c'est une maladie qui a atteint le monde. Ça a été par rapport à l'existence même de cette maladie, parce qu'il y a certains qui pensaient que ça, c'est eu des Dieu, ça c'est des croyances, des sentiments.
That some people were thinking that there were sanctions by God, there were punishments by God.
Place pour se faire de l'argent, pour avoir
it was invented by the authorities to make money and to have a way for the elections. And so what we did to
conscientiser,
try to bring awareness to this population that were we came closer to network association that were trying
autorités de la République, notamment le chef de
starting with the authorities, so the government, the president, his wife, also the different networks that were really engaged in this fight against COVID-19. We also try to also engage some small children to say that this disease exists and that it's not an invention, it's not an imagination. We really have to believe in it. What we also what we found out and strategies we came up with, and also in a social network and on our page, is that the listeners were trying to say that COVID-19 was invented.
Où nous en sommes, voilà les remèdes qui sont.
Okay, it was invented, so this is the situation where we are, and these are the medicine that are appropriate, and so they started putting together some protocols, and if you follow these protocols, you are going to be saved.
Nous avons fait intervenir.
And so we try to we engage the health minister that intervened about this strategy, and so the only communication from the health minister. So there are only those documents that we have to publish, those ones from the health ministry, and not from other people that are not habilitated to give all this type of information.
Et même pour les fake news, quand
And so for the fake news, there was also the religious platform that is that consists of priests, pastors, and imams. They took upon themselves to organize a day of prayers.
Pour prier Dieu, pour supplier Dieu de nous.
It's cutting up. So
ceux qui sont vraiment dans les croyances ont cru que
the ones that are really very religious, they really believe that you have to just go and pray God, and you're going to be saved and you're going to be protected.
De ces religieux, ces leaders.
So we went towards them, the religious people,
il y a la pandémie qui existe, il y a la maladie qui est là, et donc
to show that the pandemic exists, that the disease is here,
pour que les gens
but
croient.
it has not been easy for people to believe, even in
Se
the
protéger,
markets.
les gens qui prennent
When people, when the government
de se
to say that we
protéger,
have to protect
pas.
themselves, and they take, but they don't use those protections.
Demander de
We had to go towards them and to tell them to really bring awareness, to really start the entrance of the markets, to really bring awareness and to really show that this disease exists.
a été
But it,
nous avons mis à pencher ces leaders religieux, ces leaders d'opinion, pour qu'eux-mêmes parlent.
We engage those
C'est ce que nous avons fait. Et aujourd'hui, une prise de conscience de
that's
l'existence
what we
même de
did,
cette
to really have this
mesure,
and to really
les cas contaminés.
to realize that this disease exists.
Je crois que vous soulevez un point tellement important.
I think that you raise a point that is very important around this collaboration. And Martin, we also talked about the training about these radio actors. They are not experts in those topics, but the importance of this really go and find those people, the people that the population trusts. I want to come back on the impact on women, and also this dialogue and this collaboration. We often talk in this scenario, the impact on women. It's about things that are very sensitive, that are difficult, and people are not always comfortable to have this type of conversations live, on the different networks. I don't know if Jacques or if you have some reactions regarding this, how the community radio stations can serve women during this pandemic.
Oui, il faut
yes, we have to say that the experience that we talk about is that to say that in DRC and Kivu especially, the women were affected on a specific manner because they are the ones who have the weight of the households. And when we see the impact of the pandemic on society, we see
mais la pandémie entraîne encore
there are deaths, but there is also very important impact in the economic domain. And here, when we say economic, we say women because they're the ones who take care of the household. And what the radio stations were trying to do is to document the questions on the economic impact of the pandemic. And we found that yes, the women they had more weight to lift compared to normal times. I want to say that women are also victims of fake news because everything that people publish, like on WhatsApp groups, Facebook, it affects more women because we're in a society where the things make things where women they ask questions to men to know if it's true or not, and somehow it's more men that spread fake news, and so
parmi eux qu'il y a des gens qui manipulent un peu les choses, qui disent non, voilà.
And so there are those people that manipulate the things.
Soit,
you know, God that punishes, or it's just fake things from the government or the visitors. Like some people are saying it was a disease from the whites and that Black people were immunized. And so the work for the community radio station is a very important work, but we have to say that on what everything the radio stations had already done, and they
the
radio station have to develop more action, and if a lot of things were not done, this is also the difficulty of the training. There's a lot of people that say, yes, we want to talk about the pandemic, but what are the right information? These are challenges that we had to face. The journalists that are there maybe are not lucky to have deep training. The role of the community radio in this domain is to use the technology, and that's what we are trying to do. The fake news, they use a lot of the social networks. So we cannot stay in spreading through radio. We also have to spread in social networks. We have to associate, put together also the digital channel, and also together with the radio, because we have to fight the fake news where they are spread. And this is what we are trying to, the strategy we are trying to use in DRC, to spread the right information on Facebook, especially, and also on WhatsApp. And so Sylvie is saying we are going to go back to the digital platform, but I had a last little question in terms of this pandemic and this community radio and women in the radio stations. What were the consequences of women participation? Of the participation of women, the journalists that are women, was there a decrease of the participation of women in the radio stations that also made that these discussions were not as talked as they were supposed to, or there were more difficulty to talk about these topics? I don't know if Sylvie or Jacques, you are putting your hand up. What was the impact on the participation of journalists that are women in those structures, those infrastructures? I can always add a word to say that here in DRC, there was a state of emergency to ask people to really stay home and to work, to work using technology, so working from home. But in Goma, for example, it was not forbidden to go to work while using, of course, respecting the social distancing. There was a radio in Goma, a lady that is a journalist that had the intention to come to work.
Qui pouvait être utile à la
with a program that was maybe useful for the community. It's cutting a little bit. So I had to manage this with the radio. It was just a case. It would have been different if this journalist was a man. The decision from Dad would have been different if it was a man. And I had asked the question to the journalist: are your brothers, your brothers? They also have to follow the same rules? And she said, no, as the girls, we have to stay home, but my brothers, they can go out. We have to say that the pandemic gave women a very hard way to face the situation. Martin, you were we're talking about the importance of the local languages to give the information, the very technical language. This proximity with the listeners, women and men, they really ask for an interpretation to really
beaucoup de fake news
go through this information and really make it easy. How did the community radio station make sure
soit partagé et adapté au
that the right information and was the right information and how this information was adapted to the population? Our experience here in our studio, we tried to put in place a few rules that were exploited by the community radio stations. For example, to use the
leaders d'opinion dans les communautés.
The opinion leaders in the African communities. In the African communities, there is always someone that is respected, well-known, and when he says to do something, everyone does it. Or it can be the wise person, it can be the elders, can be the town chief, the village chief. And so these people are relying, we can rely on them. And at the local level, at the community, and once these leaders are convinced of the importance of these messages, they are recorded, and then they are part of a micro program that we broadcast. Another approach is the testimony. There is no better than a patient that got over COVID to convince people that the disease exists. And in most African countries, we are facing this situation where there is still a big part of the population that this disease is an invention, it doesn't exist, that it's used that is used by the politics to get funding. And it's hard to convince these people that this pandemic really exists. And so to get the testimony from patients that overcame COVID-19, how they were treated, and also to give advice to the people that are still against COVID and that still do not believe. And those are the approaches that are used from community radio stations. Not only take communications from WHO or health ministries. And there is also the need to write these texts, and also the participative approach to really do an interview, to do a program, for example, in a treatment center, to really give the mic to leaders. And I say it clearly, we avoided giving the mic to the political leaders, in this context where political leaders are contested that people don't believe in them, that are rejected, that are not credible, the populations are going to do the opposite. So it was a political attitude to not wear the mask because someone from this political party asked to wear it. So who are the authors of those messages, and the people that we have, the people that are credible sources to convince the population and reinforce, strengthen all these campaign of awareness campaign. Sylvie saying, and so I ask myself, you are already giving some concrete, realistic solution how to manage this type of crisis and how to make sure we have the right information, and ideally to go to collaborators that are credible, and to emphasize the participation, to go and find people in the health domain. And so in the future, how can we ensure that this information is appropriate? And in this context, a lot of information that was coming from outside and that was not always adapted to the realities of the country, the regions, etc., and additionally in the local language. So, Misa, I'm coming back to you. What should we do in the future to make sure that these things are done in a effective way? What do you need? First, I would like to bring a precision in the work of journalists who are women. Here, there are more journalists who are women, so there is no distinction between, because we are a woman, we cannot work during confinement. We all work. And it is an advantage for the redaction, for the editors, because a lot of the questions came from women, so we were able to bring responses. We created a program that was called the decryption, or to respond to the questions. We reply directly with the questions of people. Do people with blood type O, are they not infected by COVID? So we reply directly. So your question about how in the future we can make sure that the information is appropriate, is that your question? Yes. In my opinion, we really have to prepare ourselves. We had the experience of this COVID. We saw the questions, we saw the response, the solutions, also the mistakes on some information. And so the next time, it belongs to the radio stations to better train and also inform the media people to really inform the listeners better, and they really want credible information and real information. So really it's important for the media to have this to really go for the credible information, to really compare, to really compare before we spread, we broadcast this information. So we really saw during this pandemic that the speed of the information compared to the verification is a bit slow, but the people they really listen to the traditional media because too much information on the new media so we really are very careful on our side with the verification. Here in Madagascar, people really trust the radio more than
justement les nouveaux médias ont beaucoup été utilisés.
And so the new media were really used as much as for the fake news. So that's Sylvie, and she. So Benjamin, I want to know what type of digital tools the broadcasters were using during the pandemic. I would say that at this level that the community radio, they really used anything that we can find in these digital tools. But I can say is that the station, they really like to use websites through which they can check a lot of information, but also WhatsApp to collect information, but also to exchange with some people that are experts in this theme on COVID, to make sure that they are right information before broadcasting them. So they really touch everything, but they really mostly use websites and the WhatsApp platform.
Donc, j'avais
so I had many questions regarding digital tools, but I can see the time is going, and I want to give people, listeners, the opportunity to listeners to ask you questions. But before we go to the Q&A, I want to ask each of you.
On peut raisonnablement envisager que les radios.
We can reasonably think that radio stations and listeners will face other crises. There be sanitary, security, or other. And in the next few months or few years, what are your recommendations for the radio, the governments, the organizations like FRI, like Fondation Hirondelle, or even UNESCO chair, or like agents from UN, make sure that the community radio stations can better serve their listeners. So we are going to go around all of the panelists quite quickly. What are your recommendations? I will start with Sylvie.
Oui, merci Sylvie.
Thank you, Sylvie Harrison, for the question.
Nous pensons que situation, c'est mieux de mettre en place
the next situation, it will be able to put an alert system
département, parce que
each department, which is a geographical region. That's what she's talking about, department. It's cutting off a bit, so it's a bit hard to translate. Apologies. We cannot hear Sylvie Panika anymore, so I think we lost her, says Sylvie. It's better that each department. Cut again. So I think.
Une crise peut-être environnementale.
We can hear a few words and then it cuts. So unfortunately, we lost the connection with Sylvie Panika. The connection is not good. So we are going to go towards Martin, to Martin. The recommendations because reasonably we can think that there will be other crises of this type. So I will go back, same thing I was saying, we have to train, we have to accompany, we have the people from the community radio stations. In my yearly program, I moderate two trainings on the management of crisis. This year, we already registered
incluant l'aspect crise sanitaire.
To really repeat this program and include the sanitary aspect of the crisis and really try to get the lessons from this crisis and put in place some guidelines on how to put in place to broadcast programs and share the information with the population. I just want to remind that the Fondation Hirondelle is a specialist of the crisis because they intervene in countries that are at war or post-war or in a fragile state. So there's the experience to develop and to share with the partner radio stations. Today, we work with a network of radio partners that are in Central African Republic, or in DRC, or in Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, in Mali. So we have a lot of radios that broadcast daily our programs, and we want to be a Vagheni to go towards excellency, towards excellent broadcasting. So this need of training, supervision, and support, if I translate better, to really support the radio station.
Merci.
And so to Benjamin now, thank you. And I wanted to really, repeat a little bit what Martin said. I will do less commentary because our elder Martin talked about it enough. But yes, this capacity building. It will be very important for the radio stations to really adopt this theme on crisis management. That those that are trained to the profession of journalism, that they be also trained on the crisis management to really bring the contribution. Because there are situations that there are sensitive topics, and we need to talk about them with a sensitive manner. I want to add that the pandemic also impacted the community radio stations on in an economic way. During this crisis, there was no activity, so all the structures that had contract with those community radio stations, those contracts are a little bit suspended because the activity that was supposed to bring enough revenues to function, those activities are suspended. So naturally, coming out of this crisis, it will leave some radio station in a situation where they will need some support to still be alive. So all the structures that support the media, they will need to think about that, because it's very important to help the radio station resist post-COVID. Misa, your turn now. Yes. Personally, I realized that during this pandemic, that there is this tendency from the government to strengthen the control of the media and everything that is information on pandemic. So my first recommendation would be to say the media, we have to leave the media to do their work and the professionals to do their work that is known by the state. by the government that the journalists, they verify all the information before spreading it, before broadcasting it. So we have to leave the journalists to do their work to avoid fake news, because the media, people in the media, they really received training, and they train, even if it's not enough, they train their staff before they send their staff on the field. So we have to leave the media do their work, because good information really bring a lot of context too. So if the listeners are better informed, they understand better, they don't ask a lot of questions, they can also take decisions on what they have to do. So we have to leave we cannot look that everything that is sources of information, because there are some statistics that are said, not said. There is this mistrust that towards the state, and also between the government and the population. So if there is this freedom this freedom to inform, we reduce this mistrust, and we always need transparency in the management of the pandemic, because if we are transparent, here in Madagascar, we have mistrust for financing, who is going to benefit from it or not. So we really have to have this transparency. Everything that is management of the crisis will have to be transparent, because the question from people, the criticism, there is a lot of criticism that comes up from the social network, even from Vox Pop. We hear the scream, the complaints from people about a lot of things, so we have to be transparent. Thank you, Sylvie. And Jacques, one or two recommendations quickly from you. Yes, I want to really congratulate all the good work done by the journalists who are women, and all the women from the community that contributed in the production of programs. And so my first recommendation would be the one that I would like for the community radio stations to develop further the participative approach in the production of programs. And in this approach, we have to know that the woman really has an important place, an important role, because in the community we see that there are more women, so it will be unfair to not bring them. And we also have to think that they always have a lot of very original ideas, very interesting ideas. We also have to, all the partners that are in the media domain need to contribute to strengthening the community radio station, so that they really are a tool for development that finds its role in the community. And for me, it is the way to prepare for any further crisis that could come, because at this time, even when the crisis will come, and the radio is well known, and that they are the center of the participation of all the community. So facing the crisis, it will be easier to react.
Donc, je n'ai plus de questions de ma part, mais pendant toute la discussion sur le chat, il y a eu plein de questions aussi. Donc, on va prendre quelques minutes pour justement adresser quelques-unes de ces questions-là. Donc, la première question de Daniel Macassi: comment barrer la route à la mésinformation pour les radios rurales qui n'ont pas un bon de ressources en ligne et dont les communications sont limitées? Donc, si quelqu'un a
So anyone has any answer to this question for these rural radio stations that don't have a lot of access to communication, to online communication?
Jacques, allez-y.
Oui.
Jacques, go ahead.
Je pense,
I think to reply to Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Thank you to be with us. So the radio stations that are in rural areas we are more marginalized in a way that for access to information, because for this type of crisis, the population needs to know what the authorities say, what the experts say. And regarding our experience here in Northern Kivu and in DRC, to facilitate the work for this radio station and this rural population, we have to develop more the networking. In the rural areas, we cannot meet a doctor, but in urban areas we can. So the work that Coracon does in this type of situation, and journalist that is in town will meet this doctor, and this information is shared with someone that is in the rural areas. So the work in networking is very, very important that allows to share the information and to respond to the needs. But don't worry, even the radios that are in urban areas need also the information that happens in rural areas. So this is from both sides. It's also why FRI facilitates this work.
Merci. Et une question pour Misa.
So a question for Misa from Gracias.
J'aimerais savoir comment les radios communautaires à Madagascar,
how the community radio station in Madagascar talk about the question of the Malgache medicine against COVID-19, knowing that this country registers quite a lot of deaths because of this coronavirus. We announced the discovery of this medicine after the first 3 cases beginning of March. There was a hope that we are going to fight this epidemic with this remedy, with this medicine. Yes, unfortunately there is still death, because at the beginning we distributed this medicine to students in the streets. This remedy from Madagascar, this traditional medicine. We in powder or in liquid, we distributed it everywhere, but there was the peak during May for the first city, and the peak in July for Antananarivo. And yes, this question was raised several times here in Madagascar, why we didn't manage to overcome this disease, because the response is that we have the choice to take it or not take it. And here it is used, this medicine is used to help with malaria. There is also people that that bring testimonies. The last education ministry also posted their family drinking this medicine. Another minister also showing drinking this medicine, but unfortunately after 1 month, they said they were infected by COVID-19. So we cannot say, but the statistics showing that there is 200 deaths, and there is a lot of people that overcame COVID-19, 12,000 And that's the number of people that overcame the COVID-19. There is the president that last Sunday said on TV that in northern Madagascar only drank this medicine and overcame and got better from the disease. So there are a lot of testimonies that no, it doesn't help. So we don't know. We have to try it. There is also in Madagascar this intention to create pills based on Artemisia and also injections. It's going to come, but we don't know when. It's an intention from the government. But for now, compared to other countries, it's not the number of deaths is not as bad as in other countries.
Mais
in the Northern Hemisphere, but the effectiveness of this medicine is a question that is being asked in Madagascar. So a question regarding refugees, displaced people, how do a community radio station do to tackle this population in this COVID-19 context? Maybe Sylvie, I don't know if you're I think she meant, I don't know if your connection is back. Martin is intervening. I want to say something about that. In Mali, we are facing with this this problem with the refugees and displaced people population. We have refugee camps at the border with Mauritania and Burkina Faso. And in partnership with HCR, we have distributed radios, solar radios, to have access to information. And the Fondation Hirondelle, we are also looking at having a mobile radio that will take care about reaching out to these populations. And it's important to take into account these aspects that are not marginalized, that are not marginal, but that are important in the networking and in the communication domain. Thank you very much, Martin. A question from Vinod Pavarala. A question from that is asking in DRC or Central African Republic, can you tell us how the community radio stations have talked about the resolution of conflict resolution, how to promote a peace
cette composante de la pandémie. Donc, comment
at the radio and with this COVID-19 context, and how the messages have changed with this context?
Oui,
so is Jacques talking? I can say that regarding in DRC, there is the question of conflict that existed since a long time, and the pandemic came to add on to that. And so as in Korakon, we were developing activities of exchange between journalists from Congo and Rwanda to take care of the topic of Pacific cohabitation, because there are population with a lot of, that were victim of a lot of brutalities. When COVID arrived, the borders were closed, so we were not able to go from Goma to Rwanda and the other way around too. So it created a lot of frustration because the borders were closed, especially when people were already traveling and had to come back. So what we were able to do is to develop some articles, information, some format of information that were about the dynamics in terms of the border, the management of the crisis in terms of migration, of people that were blocked in Diseni, the Rwandese city, but that had to come to Goma, and also the transparency in the management of the situation, because the closing of the borders allowed the merchandise to pass, but does the people follow the quarantine procedures? So we were able to develop some radio formats about this, and also not forget the security reasons in our country. That is a topic of every day. So it was among our preoccupations, our worries. So yes, it's true, we stay home, but we cannot forget that we have to protect ourselves, but we also have to live in peace, in peace. So it's a question of every day, but it was complicated by the economy. So there was the fear that the economic question would really make things worse between the people, the ones that didn't have enough money to eat, will maybe become thieves. So we had to take into account all this in when we were doing our programs. Sylvie, a few words on this, about this.
Sylvie, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Sylvie, Panika, can you hear us? Can you?
Je crois pas qu'on entend Sylvie Panika, par contre.
We cannot hear Sylvie Panika.
Oui, je ne semble pas avoir...
Oui. Bien sûr.
Oui.
Oui, Sylvie.
We can hear her.
Cette chance d'avoir deux langues
officielles. In Central African Republic, we have two official languages, the Sangu and French. Yes, I can hear you.
Oui, je vous entends. Mais je vous entends. On a cette possibilité de...
We have this possibility.
Et ici, on a cette possibilité.
I was saying that.
Donc, on a cette possibilité.
We have this possibility in Central African Republic to intervene in the two communities. We have this possibility.
Donc, la connexion n'est vraiment pas très bonne. Je vais demander
vote to reach the two communities.
La communauté chrétienne, la COVID.
The Muslim community and the Christian community, I think she said. Even if the crisis is not religious, the mechanism that we put in place is that through a program and messages that are used by these leaders, that are spread by the leaders and that reach directly. Okay, it's cut again. So Sylvie Harrison, moderator, is saying the connection with Sylvie is really difficult. So I hope you could hear a little bit portion of what she was saying. I sent her a message to maybe put her comments on chat, her response on chat. So maybe I could share that with everyone. So our last question. How can we integrate the gender approach in the production of programs for COVID-19?
L'approche
How
genre.
to integrate the gender approach in the production of programs that are about the pandemic?
Oui,
Martin? Yes, I want to say a word in response to Jeremy. 2 weeks ago, we organized sessions on gender and COVID for the staff of Studio Tamale, and a few people from our radio partner, for radio station partners radio stations. The positioning of the media that can have in terms of the production is to take into account gender, woman, and to have messages that go directly to women, to have programs that are about the challenges, social challenges, economic challenges for women, to prevent the gender violence due to coronavirus. There are studies already, reports that show that the gender violence, especially gender violence, they really increased during the confinement period. Another point is to empower the role of women in the crisis management, to produce, for example, biographies, portraits of women that are engaged in the fight in, for example, the health domain, and also to go against fake news. Just a few ideas on how media in general can take into account gender approach COVID-19. Thank you, Benjamin. I want to add a little idea regarding the production of those, the design of those programs. Everything Martin is saying is very important, but it is also very important if we want these programs to take into account gender. It's important the design, even before choosing the theme, really to really make women participate, so that they can be part of choosing the themes and how the programs are presented. Women also can say how they want this information to be broadcasted. So this can really help, I think. It can help for the design, but it can also help, for example, to see when women are available to listen to these programs, because women and men in some places, especially in rural areas, they don't have a time when they're available. So that's what I wanted to say, to add. Thank you. So just to complete the response from Sylvie, in terms of talking of conflict, she was saying that we use always the religious platform to spread the messages to the different communities, the messages against COVID-19. So that was to complete, because of the connection problems that she was having. So I'm sure we could continue the discussion during hours and hours, and our panelists are clearly very passionate about this topic and have shared a lot of information with us. So I thank you. And a big thank you to the organizers of this dialogue. And sorry, here we go. I have a small technical issue like this at the end. So thank you to all the panelists, and I want to do a reminder of the panelists we had with us today. So we had with us today Sylvie, Panika, Martin, Faye, Boureima, Benjamin Nama, and Misa, Ramisarivelo, and Jacques, Kakule, Vagheni. Thank you again. Thank you also to the organizers of this Global Dialogue UNESCO Chair on Community Radios, and also FRI and Fondation Hirondelle, and also to our listeners. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but unfortunately we cannot keep people too late depending on where we are in the world. But it was a very interesting. We have learned a lot on how what it happened, where you are regarding this pandemic. So I see Vinod that is appearing on the screen. Vinod, do you want to say a few last words?
Yeah, just to thank everyone. I mean, thanks Sylvie for moderating the session. I mean, so many fascinating issues and cases and examples from these different countries. And I hope to some extent, at least, we have brought forward some of the issues that are relevant to the Francophone region, especially to do with community radio during this crisis period. So I'm thankful to each and every one of the panel for accepting our invitation and being here for the last 2 hours. And of course, my gratitude to FRI and FH for all the groundwork done by them for putting this together. This wouldn't have been possible without Sebastian, Ian Pringle, Mark Leclerc, and other colleagues at FRI. And on all your behalf, my thanks also to Clementina for doing such a wonderful job, and really grateful. I mean, this is the first time we tried this kind of a bilingual dialogue, and it gives us some hope to do something like this when we go to Latin America, perhaps with Portuguese and Spanish. We'll try that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Donc, je vais traduire rapidement, je vais interpréter rapidement. Donc, il remercie les panélistes, toutes les équipes qui ont aidé à organiser l'événement.
Sylvie is translating into French what Vinod just said.
C'est un événement bilingue. Donc, il est très heureux avec les résultats et maintenant, ça va être quelle autre langue? Donc, est-ce qu'on peut faire et inviter les gens justement dans tous les différentes langues pour entendre les perspectives de tout le monde. Donc, merci beaucoup à tous et à toutes. Merci et à la prochaine.
Thank you to everyone and see you next time. Bye.